Software development has a worrying trend. We first select the tools, then try to figure out the processes and hope that the culture absorbs those. On Real DevOps, we first focus on the people and then on the processes and lastly select the proper tools. Never before has there been a greater need to work separately but still together, and this seems to be a new trend. The core values of Real DevOps culture is to collaborate and break silos, also remotely. Hello everybody, welcome to our today's webinar about the culture of shared prosperity. I have to say that this culture is something that I have grown fond during maybe last 3 years or so, and I'm not that expert on culture yet, so I'm very fortunate today that I have with me a specialist talking about culture. So I have Taru here from GEA.
Yes, thank you for the invitation and having me here. So my name is Taru Hermunen-Kuusela and I work at CCEA, that's GEA as we pronounce it, yes, correctly. And GEA is an expert organization in people-driven change. So our mission and job in companies is to ensure that the investments made in any change projects or change initiatives will and can produce the value that is expected, whether it's like a functional value or also money-wise value. And GEA services include change execution, change portfolio leadership and management, and also change capability development, thus competence development in change. And in addition to these, GEA's Selkeä Insight measurement tool and the services related ensure that and makes it possible to follow any kind of change and its proceeding in an organization, like in real time. And now when GEA is part of Gofore family, then we have, of course, exceptional possibilities to serve our clients even any better, because as we talk digitalization and services related to software development also, isn't it so that the person and the people are in the heart and core of things?
Yeah,
still.
Definitely. I have to say that I'm looking so much forward about these discussions. I'm sure that the listeners are also getting much out of this, but I'm also looking forward to get so much out of these culture things myself today. And yeah, my name is Jani Haapala and I'm a DevOps architect here in Gofore. And let's go forward with our agenda. So this webinar today, this is a second part of our 3 parts webinar series about this Real DevOps. And the previous part was about the sustainable value creation, and that is also recorded. So you will get the link for that also if you would like to watch that later on. And we will still have the third webinar coming about this small sneak peek about the daily work of the DevOps engineer and how does the work look when digging deep on the DevOps team. And GEA has also their own webinar series about these change webinars. And these webinars are currently only in Finnish, unfortunately, but you will also get links to those webinars if you want to look them in Finnish. And today's topics, culture is huge, vague, big, kind of many formats and shapes. So that's why I thought that we are dividing today's talk with 3 different categories. And first we look a bit at what is the culture and how we kind of see the culture and DevOps, and then we have a brief look on how to make the change towards DevOps culture. And lastly, we are discussing a bit that what is actually the real value that we get out of these culture changes. And if you get any questions during this presentation and talk, please about the culture. So last webinar, we briefly kind of touched the culture in many places on the webinar. We talked about the technical practices of DevOps, and we talked about the processes, and kind of in many places we slightly talk about culture. We saw that the culture is affecting on many places, but it was very shallow how much we discuss about the culture, and that's why I thought that it's very good to kind of reserve an own session for the culture. And I would like to start now today's talk so that we kind of make our own decision. I have heard it in culture in so many contexts, so I'm kind of overwhelmed that what is the culture now? So if you can briefly kind of describe that, how we are seeing the culture today.
Yeah, well, that's a very good question, and as you already said, culture can be shallow and something that is very difficult to take a grab of or touch anyways, or how do you see it in practice? That's a relevant question. So it is kind of the hidden force behind all the actions and the ways of working in a company. But as we talk about the ways of working, of course it's the force behind, but also it's something very concrete, because you can really show it and of course create it also by the daily actions that you and everyone else makes during the day. But of course, as we speak about the manners and what kind of ways we have, those are kind of a long distance development of how things have decided on, what kind of options have we chosen, what kind of choices has been made. So it all affects to the culture. So it also reflects kind of the history of the company and also the days where the company has been set up, for example, if it has a long history already. And I think the fun way of approaching culture is to search Google pictures, and you can find many pictures that in which culture each the company strategy and organizational charge. First thing in the morning, so for the breakfast, and then for lunch, and again for dinner, and that tells kind of the nature of culture very well, that even though it wouldn't be that visible, it still affects on things and may also overrule all these strategies and organizational functions, if it does. And yeah.
One thing to rule them all.
Yeah.
So culture is basically, it's the root cause of all the actions that people are doing.
Well, kind of, yes, because I would say that culture is culture when things get out of your backbone. So it's already something that you don't really consciously think about, but you just act the way you are used to, and this is when you have these things that you have used to do some way, and you have the manners, and of course in companies the teams and the whole organization has its own manners and ways of doing. That's the culture, and people kind of adapt to the culture and take the cultural themes in their daily actions as well, and maybe they don't even think about it that much, but they get used to act and do things as everyone else does also. And it's very easily adopted.
Yeah, so you said that cultures are something that forms within the people, and it's interesting. I would like to ask that how this culture is reacting, especially in companies, when kind of people are in the center of culture, but people are coming and going from the company. So how does the company culture react to this constant change of people?
Of course, the culture is also in constant change. It's a dynamic phenomenon. It's not something stable or stacking to any decade, but it's changing. And of course, when someone goes and a new person comes in, every new person brings something new in the company and in the ways of working. And that's kind of the points where it is measured how strong the culture is, whether we can take this new person inside of our culture or whether we have a kind of a small or big conflict, for example, of these approaches facing each other's. And the new people, as I said, quite easily and fast adapts to the way of working of a company and maybe the true nature of the culture and how genuine the culture is and the feelings, then you kind of learn in your daily actions and daily work, and then in 1 month, 6 months, 1 year, you learn quite a lot of it, and then you are much deeper in the culture and can really say what kind of culture is and how does it work in this company. Because I think that people are very wise in their own jobs, and in every companies, every person has some kind of feeling and opinion about the culture, even though it wouldn't be something that is written on the wall. Still, you can say whether our company culture is good or something I want to support, or whether it's bad and something I really don't like, dislike, for example. And yeah, I think everyone has this feeling and opinion about it also.
That actually, I just got one picture on my mind about this. It's very interesting. I mean, I got the picture about my daughter painting with watercolors. I mean, you take a strong culture and dip the brush in the water and you affect the whole color that the water is. I mean, and you can get these kind of slight tones of color or then very strong colors depending on what kind of culture you inject on the company.
And of course, the company culture, it involves and includes a lot of different parts. You have like the lunch culture and coffee culture, and you have the human resources culture, you have the leadership culture, decision-making culture, and this is everything that then forms the company culture, as to say.
Yeah, culture of cultures.
yeah. You have the one big and then a lot of different parts of it as well.
Yeah, that's actually very interesting.
Yeah, but anyway, the daily actions are really in the core, and as we have talked about the DevOps when preparing this webinar as well, isn't the daily actions and routines also in the basis of DevOps?
Yeah, I see that DevOps, in DevOps, the culture plays a huge role. I mean, just like you said, it's the daily actions of the team members there. And then actually people are quite often seeing DevOps as a practices of tools or processes, but in its core, it's actually cultural actions that people are doing. The very core of DevOps is about breaking silos. And I would say that it's breaking different silos, and these silos are different cultures, and kind of combining these silos, combining the cultures. It's very funny thing that in DevOps we have this developer culture and this operations culture. And when you look them more carefully, you actually notice that they are quite the opposite of each other. So basically, development culture is that you are very fast creating some value and you are just throwing it forward and seeing that how customer is liking that and kind of making these very rapid changes. And then this operations culture is normally such that don't change anything. If it works, don't touch it. Don't break it, and try to keep everything as stable as they are. And now with this DevOps, we are trying to combine these cultures. We are trying to make them work together so that they are sharing some same culture. And then the kind of earliest and most visible actions to this culture combining has to be this kind of blameless postmortems, where the original idea was that when some incident is happening or has happened, you don't focus on the people that caused it, that you rather focus on the actions and the kind of processes that made it happen. And that's why you don't blame the people, but you blame kind of the processes. And nowadays I would more like to talk about blameless work, not only postmortems, but all the work should be blameless. You should kind of enable it to be blameless, the work.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, the other core cultural things in DevOps are these kind of learning, doing together, sharing your information with the whole organization, and these kind of things.
So these are actually really strongly affecting to the company culture as well. So it's like
definitely.
DevOps isn't DevOps only and in some kind of box
Yeah.
inside of software development, but it affects the whole company culture as well, both sides.
Yeah, and it's actually quite interesting now when I'm thinking that the culture in DevOps, many are saying that it's a DevOps culture, but when you look at more deeply, actually it's not a DevOps culture. it's completely something else, because DevOps is founded on a very, very strong basis, very strong foundation of, I would say, 4 different cultures. And we have, for example, this lean culture and agile culture that kind of makes people focus on the waste and reducing the waste, getting rid of the waste and making things flow, making things to go fast forward. And then you have this culture that comes from extreme programming, for example. And that was a surprise for me at the time to actually notice that it was already on the extreme programming that they have defined this pair coding, they have defined this need for unit tests, need for code reviews, and also the fast feedback about testing is coming from XP, and the whole idea of creating the test before the code, so this TDD. All of these are coming actually from the extreme programming. And then the third one is this theory of constraints, where we try to visualize our work and understand that what is now the slowest part of the work, so that we can focus on making it faster and serve that part. And lastly, but not least, is this systems thinking culture that constantly tries to model things as a systems. And then in this context, I would say that these systems are teams and different cultures, and more than that, how these cultures are interacting with each other and what to do with those. So basically, there are actually quite a few things that are DevOps culture. There are quite many of that comes to the DevOps, and the beauty of DevOps is, I see, that the ability to combine them as a one, to make this development and operations teams silos work together. So kind of use these good cultures to grow the team.
Yeah. So it is formed on quite strong background, cultural background as a whole. Yeah, that's
and that
quite
is
interesting.
Sometimes maybe mislooked a bit. So people are so much focusing on the tooling and processes that they kind of forget that there are lots of cultural things that should be addressed also.
Yeah, because that reveals when you talk about DevOps, actually you need to talk about the culture as well.
yeah,
Somehow.
definitely.
Yeah.
One interesting thing is that, I mean, I have this funny word here, this cultureless. So basically, I had the idea that what if we don't have a culture? I mean, is it possible that we don't have any culture at all?
I would say it's not possible.
It certainly feels sometimes so that we don't have culture. But
Yeah, and I think the feeling is correct, yes. But if it feels that the culture doesn't exist, or it's not visible, or you cannot touch it anyway, then I would say that the culture is only weak, or it's something that is not fully recognized to be the culture. And I think the question is then more or less the thing that then the kind of decided ways of action, decided ways of working do not support fully the goals and objectives that we want to achieve with our common working and shared way of working. And if these kind of common ways of working and shared ways do not exist, of course it kind of weakens the cultural basis and weakens your own experience of being included in the team, for example, or being included in the actions that take us forward to the objectives. And then, of course, the individual experience can be quite negative. Well, that's that's something that makes you tell that there is no culture, or I don't feel the culture being my own?
Yeah, actually, yeah, I think that it's this lack of culture. Maybe it's more of that you have lots of cultures, not one culture. I mean, you have a bunch of different cultures taking you to all kind of directions rather than having one constant culture, and that kind of feels that you now doesn't have a culture because everybody is not going to the same direction.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it also. Yes, very, very much so. And I think that when you don't have the culture, or it's weak, or there are too many cultures not included properly together, I think the culture isn't the problems. But then again, we need to look at the actions and the decisions behind. And if the company has decisions made and choices made, and these choices and decisions culturally hasn't supported any joint culture to be formed, of course it's not the blame of culture, but it's the blame of the decision making and the processes behind how we kind of decide on the ways we want to work.
Yeah, you said that culture is something that comes from your backbone, and culture is kind of affecting how you are behaving and what you are doing. So are there anything that culture doesn't affect? Something that we cannot blame culture on?
Well, you can never blame the culture, and I think the culture is always there, whether you kind of do it consciously or unconsciously. And maybe it's something that in most cases it affects you and has an impact on unconscious level, but then the conscious decision making and choosing out of options, that's the way of tackling it in concrete, and taking a grab of it, and really kind of deciding in which way we want to develop from this point, if everything isn't correct at the moment. And I think these kind of concrete actions are the way to lead to DevOps as well.
Yeah.
Because you need actions and how to kind of lead and manage the cultural change towards the DevOps. And how would you kind of put it in one sentence, or what's the diamond, and why the reason to take culture included and in the focus when you think of the DevOps and making change towards DevOps?
Yeah, I would say that, like we already discussed about the meaning of culture in DevOps work, I see that when going towards DevOps, it's mostly about the cultural kind of clash with the developers and operations people. So definitely that is very important thing to from the beginning try to manage the culture and try to understand that, hey, why these cultures are now a bit different and how we can make them as a kind of unified culture. How we can kind of help them to share the same culture. And also DevOps is kind of defining new kind of areas on the team, so that the team is getting more responsibilities about what they are doing, and they are getting more freedom that how they are doing things. So definitely there should be a proper culture that enables to use wisely this freedom and also be responsible at what you are doing. So even though again it's lots of tools and these things, but the culture is what makes them think about things.
Yeah, and I guess that the clashing of culture and heading to new ways of working through DevOps also kind of puts up and creates some confusion and also pressure for individuals on how to make it forward and how to make the change, because I need to change, or everybody needs to change themselves.
And that's actually one thing that normally when looking about these culture changes and DevOps changes, that's an interesting thing, why I actually was so interested about this cultureless, so lacking culture, is because that's what I often see. I mean, you are having so many cultures that it almost seems that you don't have any common culture.
Yeah.
So yeah, and that is a big thing also. You need to have these roles and responsibilities there, and you need to lead also the cultural change.
Yeah, and that's why you need to be brave and take a grab of it, and of course the culture isn't something that you couldn't work with, but it's definitely something that you can develop and change as you can do any other changes. So systematic approach, you can take a logical way of seeing things and deciding upon things, and then really form the strong vision and objectives where you want to go, and what kind of things you want to achieve, and thereby by communicating it right and often then you get the people to live the change. And of course it goes in stairs, so you need to first only build up the comprehension, and then later on it gets to your backbone of how to really act and do things. And of course making it easy for the people and individuals that's in the core of making the change, because then when you kind of everyone to participate in the joint discussion and common discussion, reflection on how to go forward, and how does it challenges the change any one of us, then kind of you have the basis of going forward together.
Yeah, we were actually when we were discussing before this webinar about this change and also this how culture is seen and affecting on the teams. I mean, there was very interesting term that you said about this psychological security and safety, and like we saw in the first webinar, for example, when going to DevOps, it means that you are kind of, in worst case, you are changing everything from the team. I mean, you are changing the tools, you are changing the processes, and you are changing the management model and responsibilities and roles and whatnot. So what leaves to the person? So I was actually very interested about this term and actually understanding that what does it mean now here. But could you also tell to our listeners that what is now this psychological safety?
Yeah, I think the core meaning of the whole term is kind of take the person or the individual into account and make it safe for everyone to be themselves and express their own thoughts, thinking, emotions, feelings, also opinions, in a way that if it's critical, it's safe to say it also. And also all the fears, and if you are scared of the change, it's safe to pronounce and express that also. And anything you say is not used against you. It's like the blameless thing that you are not blamed. And then when you are making a mistake or some problem occur, then it's not to blame anyone, but you kind of in a company or in a society, community, build joint feeling that in where the mistakes can be turned into learning experiences. You just kind of see what kind of things have gone wrong and what's right, and then you learn how to do it better next time.
Yeah, this safety is actually, now after discussing this, I mean, if I need to summarize the whole culture thing for me with one word, that kind of why there needs to be a good culture and what do you do with the culture, and that would be safety. I mean, I feel that that's why people are seeking culture and seeking to be a part of the culture, to get the proper kind of safety, to be what they are, and especially in DevOps, to have the safety to innovate, for example, and safety to try some new things, and kind of, you cannot do that if the safety is not there.
Yeah, exactly, because everyone, I believe that everyone wants to make the job as well as anyone can, and so use the best abilities, but also have the opportunities to develop personally in the job and along the job and along the years, so you get new possibilities and opportunities in your career. And herein it's really important to acknowledge that psychological safety is also kind of a group phenomenon. So it's not only an individual experience, but a group phenomenon. So when you kind of co-work in a team, the success of a team isn't really explained through the individual qualities of persons, but it's explained by the cooperation, how the team works together. And in this cooperation, actually, the most thing affecting behind is psychological safety, which explains then the success of the team. And herein it's kind of it's a term and a big term, but then again it's very concretely involved in the culture in a company level as well, and really important to take into account.
Yeah, I have to say that I have a few kind of very good memories during my years from different teams, and I mean for all of those teams the maybe the biggest thing has been that it's not me, it's we. And I mean you get the we part, and then you get the safety, and I mean those teams, they achieve the kind of huge things because it was safe to do those things and experiment and get your thoughts out of your head and kind of ask things from others. So
yeah, exactly, because when you are safe, you have the trust to learn and try out new things and new ways of working, even though they wouldn't be so familiar to you in before. But you can really take something and develop yourself and challenge your own individual strengths also in new ways. And that's kind of the thing that is created based on psychological safety, and you cannot have the same without it.
This is very interesting topic, but same time a bit sad topic because I was thinking that about some indications, because I normally see that this is something that grows inside the team to get the safety, but people are also quite too easily getting used to also the bad habits. They don't see that the culture is or the safety is going to the wrong direction. So it's sad that outside the team it's very easy to see that now everything is not on place. You can see these small nuances or some wording that they are using that now there's no safety on the team. But the teams themselves, they don't see these things. And most sadly, they might see it on that point when there's a burnout or persons leaving from the team. So are there any good indications or something that can be used to kind of have these early warning signs that the culture is going to wrong direction?
Well, when you have the culture of safety, it is natural for people to be proactive and take new things into discussion also. And I think the discussions and how people react in cooperation is kind of the first place where to look and also notice is if something goes wrong, because when the psychological safety starts to get down, then the first implications is that people don't want to discuss anymore. They prefer to be silent, for example, or they prefer not to take any problem into discussion. They don't want to raise any issues, even those issues and problems would be the very important way of getting things forward and developing the joint efforts as well. But when you don't do this, you kind of grab into your own core and don't want to cooperate anymore. And of course, when one person does this, then the other one gets to do it as well, and it gets a group phenomenon as well. and the way of working that kind of strengthens itself, because when a lot of people and some amount of people decide that they don't want to participate anymore, then it's kind of a lost game, and the activity level of anything goes down, and maybe the objectives are not achieved anymore, or they are, but still you know that there are awful lot of problems behind.
That's actually, now when you mention it, those are the few things that I very much recognize. I mean, very good early indicators about those things that people are not anymore maybe making new initiatives, for example. They are not suggesting anything. For example, you might be on an agile team, you might have a retros or something, but suddenly you don't have any ideas that what could be done better.
Yeah.
And the other thing is that people are not anymore, they don't dare to challenge each other. I mean, and when the challenge is happening, it's kind of more ugly. I mean, the matters are not fighting, but the people more.
Yeah.
And those are kind of very bad things for the safety. And after a while, people are just doing their own things and not challenging things or questioning why things are done. So
and based on that kind of atmosphere, you kind of decide that you do only what you have to. You don't push anything extra, you don't put in any extra effort, or you don't want to really challenge yourself in order to achieve your personal development goal, for example. Also, you don't care anymore. And I think the carelessness is here the scary thing that is then created.
Yeah, people are getting like numb of the work.
Yeah,
I mean,
they just go to work.
Yeah, that's very bad on those cases. We have been discussing now about this psychological safety and also the transition, that how to do the transition to DevOps. And I would like to also touch a bit about this follow-up thing, that it's too easy to go back to the old. I mean, I have doing couple of weight loss projects and then it's so easy that to do the project and go back to how things were, and then everybody knows that what is the result on that. So basically, how should we make sure that we don't have a good thing going and then we go back to the old after a while?
Yeah, very good question, and good way of putting it also. I think one thing you said was that first you have the project and then you have the things you need to do continuously ever since. And I think with the cultural change, that's the quite useful approach to it also. So first it might be useful to put the cultural change into package of a project. So startup phase is a project, but then you have the things that you need to continuously do ever after. And following up is one thing you need to do. You need to, in the beginning, you need to form kind of the baseline, a picture about the status of things as they are now, and then think what we want to change and in which direction and which are the things that we are going to tackle first. Because also in ensuring the success, you can't change everything at once. And when we discuss about cultural change and in DevOps, for example, DevOps contexts, there's a clash of many cultures. There's many issues can be raised, and you really can't work with them all at one time. So you need to choose where to start, and then when you have had some progress in one thing, you can then continue to another. And very important thing here is not to kind of assume only. So not make assumptions that this one action will lead to everlasting impacts. But you really should follow the things and the progress and how things go on continuously.
Yeah, so you're saying that like in my weight loss projects, it took quite a long time to realize that diet doesn't mean the project part, but everything after that part. So basically it's the way to live after that. And I learned also that from now till the end I need to do some measuring for those things, and I need to understand those things and follow up those things. So you're saying also that for the companies, these cultural things, they should be something that you from now on start to measure and lead throughout the company life.
Yeah, basically because as where we started from was that the culture may be a thing that you don't see it's difficult to kind of describe what it is in concrete. So I think the follow-up also makes it more concrete, because when people need to understand for pulse questionnaires or whatever it is, how the information is gathered, they need to kind of say their opinion, express what they feel in things. They kind of need to live the culture in every point, and of course the follow-up isn't something that you need to do for itself only, but that's the way of kind of gathering information and also gathering some feedback from the clients, that's the workers and the employees, of how they see things and how they feel things. And when you have this feedback, then you can use the feedback in order to make development further and make further progress and new decisions, and if it's needed, then you can also change direction.
Yeah, that's actually a good thing to notice, that this follow-up is not only for the company and for the ones that are wanting some kind of culture. This is also a excellent reflecting point for everybody to see that what is our current culture.
Yeah.
Is it something that we want, or do we need to change it? Not only to see that it's not up to some culture,
yes,
but to see that now it is what it is and what should we do for it.
Yeah, exactly. And this is best supported by doing the follow-up constantly, for example, monthly basis or quarterly basis, because if you measure things only once a year, that may give the expression that it's just asked for and nothing happens after.
Yeah.
But when it comes to continuously on your face and you need to kind of express your opinion, then you live it more thoroughly all the time and also say what you think, and it kind of promotes and makes the psychological safety even stronger.
Yeah, to make a successful change, you need to monitor it.
Yeah.
Make it visible.
Yeah, because otherwise you live based on assumptions, and how does that lead a company to any financial objectives?
Yeah, true.
Yeah, I don't know, but yeah, here we came into an issue that's, I think, is in the heart of the cultural changes and changes of DevOps as well, because it's not done only for itself. DevOps isn't done for itself. Culture isn't created or being alive for itself only, but they are to create value. And at first hand, of course, when we talk about the people and individuals, is the employees. What kind of value do you see that DevOps creates for people?
Yeah, I would have to say that the biggest value is the kind of we phenomenon. So basically the safety to kind of do what you're best of and utilize your skills. So basically form a community, make the team as your community and make it as a safe place to do those things that are kind of expected from you. And now with DevOps, I mean, the context is to create software solutions. The context is to create these world-class solutions. So how we can help the teams best to kind of own the solution and be proud of those and make them able to do those solutions. And those are the kind of biggest things that I feel that we enable with these proper cultures, and especially with this safety.
Yeah.
I mean,
so you kind of create the feeling and atmosphere that you belong to a group and team that creates world-class things and solutions, and then also have the individual experience that yourself, you have the abilities and the opportunities to do that.
Yeah. So
and the freedom.
Yeah, who wouldn't like to do something that is
Yeah,
highly
exactly.
appreciated by everybody? So yeah, to properly enable that, that's the biggest thing that can be achieved.
Yeah.
I mean, tools and processes are coming and going. You can have something that supports you on the certain phases of your life, but the proper culture takes you the longest way. So
yeah.
So definitely, I have to say that it's the biggest enabler for me to have these DevOps teams.
Okay. Yeah, that's good to hear. I think you have quite a long history and experiences from DevOps development projects or going to DevOps. How have the individuals taken these kind of changes or in tooling and processes and in culture-wise?
It's hard, yeah, because so much changes, and normally it's hard because most of the changes are coming at same time. You cannot kind of try to take one change at a time. So basically, you try to change something and realize that you need to change this and this and this and this. So the proper way to kind of start it from some good abstraction like culture, kind of form the proper culture there, and then according to that culture start to make certain changes.
Yeah.
That would help a lot for many teams.
And I think it would be useful also to clarify what are the additional things that you create through it. So what's the adding value for employees, and communicate it properly so that everyone gets the same understanding. What is that we make this change for, and how is it supposed to kind of support your own work as well?
Yeah, and it's actually the culture that makes the vision concrete. I would say that, I mean, you have the vision, and if you have proper culture, they will make the vision concrete. But you kind of, that culture aligns people to understand why things are done and share also the common vision about those things.
Yeah.
But one thing that also came up when we were discussing about this webinar was something that I previously haven't even thought about. I mean, when hearing it makes sense, but before that, I for some reason I cannot understand why I haven't even thought about it. And was this thing that the culture actually is seen and affects for the customers also. So how can this be possible? I mean, culture is something that is within the people doing something. So how can the culture be so big thing on the customers also?
Yeah, well, that's it's a very good point of view, and I very much like it myself, and I'm fond of it. I think the question is rather that with DevOps and with the culture, we want to create a trust for the people, trust for the teams, trust for the company internally, so that we can work the most effectively and productively together. And when you kind of then put it in words, what is trust? It's a feeling. And of course, this trust is something that we want to share with our clients as well, isn't it? So that the client can have the trust in our services, in our products, in our way of working, that they can trust that we can deliver what they expect. So it's kind of a trust of fulfilling their needs. and as I said, trust is a feeling, and feelings tend to kind of mirror themselves. So if you are enthusiastic about something, I get enthusiastic, and when I create new ideas, you get easily in the same mode. And this is what we want to achieve as a mode with our clients as it's best, because then you can really see that this very good employee experience within a company really creates exceptional client experience as well. We kind of live the same change with our clients and give them ideas, and when we follow up the change with our clients and what they think about our products and services and about our company as an entity, maybe we can also use the feedback in order to serve them better. And when we do this, the clients want more and they are happy, and they want to commit in our services, in our products more and more.
So you're basically extending the psychological safety circle not only for the team but to include the customer also.
Very much so, yes.
And make the customer also part of that safety group. And
and I think this is an insight that has really got into discussion during the latest years, during the past 5 years, for example. And I think that the leading companies the companies that really want to head forward and make exceptional things for their clients in the future have already somehow taken this issue very severely, and they really put an effort in order to think the employee culture, employee experience, in order to create experiences for the clients that they want to create and the results they want to achieve with the clients.
Yeah, that's. I was going to ask about some examples on that. Some cases where you can have actually seen that the culture shines from the company, and for me, I thought, for example, a Tesla as an example, that they have been exceptionally well taking the customer into care. For example, it's okay for the customer to get maybe some feature or have some feature on the car that might even not work, because when you mention it, they will fix it right away.
Yeah.
And even though if you are one Tesla user amongst millions, I mean, when you ask something, you are heard, and you know that they will. I mean, the culture is to take you also into care.
Yeah, exactly. And this is a feeling of being trusted and a feeling of trust, and you can share your ideas, and maybe someone will grab this feedback and kind of put it forward in the best way. And this way it kind of grows together very, very much.
Yeah, it's actually quite understanding to now see it like this way, that how much actually the safety and the culture can mean for the company.
You can create brand value.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, so it actually shows quite well if you are taking them as a part of your culture. Apple might be one example about. Some say it already a religion, but I would still say it as a culture. But people are so into that culture on that safety zone that.
Yeah, and also if you can create something that your client supports 100%, and everyone kind of promotes your services and are eager to kind of tell their friend also to use. That's the best case.
Yeah, so definitely, yeah, I have to say that culture is affecting on that side also quite heavily. So now finding out that the culture is actually a huge thing on the customers also, and huge thing for the companies to try to achieve. So how should we connect these cultural things to company strategy? I mean, how we are kind of enabling the company to produce kind of right kind of value by understanding the strategy, the cultural parts of the strategy.
Yeah, that's a good thing, and I would begin with kind of aligning what our company is for. They kind of are started up based on some client need and what is needed out there in the market, and the company then tries to best fulfill this kind of need for their clients. And company wants to grow. It's the making business means that you grow, and what we want to achieve is like a joint way of working that creates the best ways of growing together as well. Also psychologically, but also then financially, and grow the products, grow the services, so that our clients can really get the feeling out of them every time they use it, or every time they buy it, and so forth. And this is that also creates value for the company, and I very much and I'm in an opinion that of course in companies you should then take kind of culture into account very severely, maybe put it in the strategy and kind of leading the way that we really take care of these things in order to achieve something.
Do you feel that the companies are they seeing the cultural effect enough? You said earlier that the culture is something that is on the background and something that comes from your backbone, but are they paying enough kind of attention to the culture and actually recognizing on the strategy that what part is actually culture and what is the effect on culture on certain strategic goals, for example.
Well, maybe some companies might already recognize this and work on it very consciously and by doing decisions and choosing other options in order to support the culture. But I think in big picture, in many times it comes behind only, and it's only kind of taken into account when you already see that things have gone wrong. and that also might be kind of the best way then to form the background in order to take new kind of decisions and have the brave heart in you in order to decide new things and on new basis, because of course it challenges the leaders and decision makers also. If the culture hasn't been recognized before that well, and it's not something that the company is familiarized working with in history, of course the first time is also always very exciting. It can be nervous, it can be pressuring you. So you need to be brave in order to make the decisions and take the lead into a new direction.
I heard this thing that some companies might. So how should we enable these companies to kind of then lead the culture? What the companies should do so that they can actually raise the culture on the focus also on these themes and visions?
Yeah, well, in some companies they are already kind of forming cultural booklets, for example. You can state cultural things on pages, but I don't think that's necessary in all the cases, because of course there is ways of working with culture and doing things in concrete without talking about the culture. And I think that's one way in companies that the culture might be a difficult theme or expression. It might be a way of taking it into concrete by not talking about it. But you can talk about the ways of working. You can talk about, this is how we do the work at our company. This is how we tackle the problems. This is how we manage the problems. This is how we take care of personnel. This is how we eat together at lunchtime. This is how we have coffee breaks, and whatever it might be. You can tell about the ways that form the basis of the working for anyone in the company, and that creates the culture. You don't need to tell and speak about the culture, but you can still do things for it.
That's actually an excellent point. That I was just thinking that culture is one thing. I mean, you said culture is many things and cultures, and when talking about changing your culture, and it's excellent point to kind of narrow it to the company context, because if I say that you need to change culture, I mean, you have cultures outside the work also. You have cultures at home and some other cultures, and I feel it might be even offending to somebody to say that you need to change your culture. You need to change what you are, basically. So to properly narrow that on the company context and talk about those things that matter on that context, that would help a lot.
Yeah, because these are the manners and ways of working that you want to get into backbones of everyone.
Yeah.
Because then the culture is kind of measured and challenged when the leaders and decision makers are not there. So what happens when the cat is away? What do the mouses do?
Yeah, true.
And that's kind of the thing. And really also think and reflect on whether really companies afford to make any changes and invest in new things and tools if they don't ensure that the people kind of grow into the new model, into the usage of the new tools in order to work along with the new processes. What happens? And what happens if people are left out? We have briny, shiny new tools and processes. Nobody uses them. What kind of investment is that? Do the companies really have afford to do this?
Yeah, exactly. We are quite soon again running out of time. that's a shame, because this is so interesting topic. I mean, it's so nice to learn these new things and actually make these connections, that why things are actually behaving how they are.
Yeah.
But our time is starting to be over today. But as an end note, I would like to ask you shortly that how would you kind of summarize this culture and as a phenomenon of the company, and what to do with the culture?
Well, how to put it together? The company has, and of course it has to have, the objectives and targets and goals that are something that you want to achieve. And I think the culture is a way to ensure that all the personnel, all the people, every individual, every team is kind of in one line of going forward to the joint and shared objectives. And you need to ensure that these ways of working and seeing goals and how to make the steps forward are coming from the backbone. And if they are not, then you truly need to do something. And even if they do already, then you need to follow up and still make constant learning and constant improvement in every step of the way.
Yeah, and when looking from the DevOps point of view, I would maybe summarize this whole culture thing for the psychological safety. I mean, that's for me has to be the biggest thing, that know your culture and know the effect of the culture to make it safe to work for all the people, and also make it able to align the culture with the company culture.
Exactly.
And I mean, that might be the biggest thing for me in the culture.
Yeah, it's kind of enabling the best possible results.
Yeah, and
also
the
world-class
kind of
business.
seeing the kind of effects, and also the what it causes when they are not aligned. I mean, even though it's something on the background, the causes that what it happens are huge if it's not aligned.
Very much.
But yeah, thank you very much. Here are our contact information. If you have any questions, ideas, comments, if you want to challenge our ideas, everything is welcome, so you can contact us still after this webinar. And now I think that we can go for the questions part.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thanks.
Yeah, hello everybody. Hello Taru also.
Hi.
Yeah, I guess that we can now go to the questions part. And I see that we already have quite many questions here. That's always nice to see. And if you still have more questions, please just add those questions on the list. But going to the first question asks that what are the advices for those who are currently working as administrators but would like to be on the DevOps role, and especially for those who lacks competencies and experiences in development and testing side? And I can maybe answer to that. And
please do.
I would say that the most important advice is that if you have passion for something, just follow it. And the psychological safety is the most important thing to seek out from the team. I mean, if the team has good safety, then it's very safe to learn these things. And I have been in many teams during my years, and always when there's a new candidate coming, I'm never looking first at actually what the candidate can do, but what is the passion of that candidate, because people can learn everything if they like. And actually, in many cases, if you have somebody that has done many years of something, it might be, as a cultural wise, a bit more hard maybe to get that person to fit the team, because the culture with him is already too kind of strong in some other ways. So the passion for learning something and finding the right place to support the passion, that definitely takes you a long way.
Yeah, I would add that having in mind and leaning on the growth mindset in personal level also, but also in a team, is very important in modern job market and the work also, because the learning mode is more important than knowing everything already.
yeah, world is changing so fastly that nobody can know everything nowadays. You always need to learn something new, and you need to have the mindset that you are willing to learn.
Yeah.
Okay, second question. I guess that this then goes to Taru more. So the question is that I'd like to hear what are the most important indicators to monitor culture change. We already discussed on the webinar that what are the kind of how we see the culture change, but can you summarize it maybe to some that you feel that are the most important indicators?
Wow, indicators to follow up the cultural change. Well, I think there is no one way of looking at this, but rather you always need to put the following up into the context of the company and what kind of change is done, because of course some kind of tool implementation is very different from developing a growth mindset culture, for example. And of course, then the indicators of whether we have made any progress or not are very different also. But the one thing that was already discussed is that personal experience of people facing the culture and needing to live it through is one indicator that is always relevant, because the personal experience does reflect upon how the change really goes along and how is it really evolving in the reality as well. So I think that the experience measurement and following up the feelings and emotions and taking up the feedback somehow from people is very important in every change.
Yeah, I was just thinking the same thing about this when you are kind of starting to drive towards certain kind of culture. These employee happiness, these NPS types of measurements are normally quite well showing you that how much people like the company nowadays. So that's a good indication. The other one that came to my mind is maybe a bit more difficult, but kind of somehow measure that how people are talking about the company, that how people are talking about the daily things that are happening. Are they kind of praising those, or are they down talking those? So
yeah, always complaining. Yeah, true.
Yeah, so next question, there's just a second. Do you have particular team who is in charge of culture monitoring and supporting culture change, for in change of helping co-workers with it? So is culture kind of job for one team, or how to make the culture change?
Well, I think in cultural changes, well, one way of approaching is to set up a project management office for the cultural change, or the change as such, and kind of have the daily tasks assigned to the project team or the change team. But then again, in every change, it is very important to really ensure the participation at all the levels that are affected by the change. So if they are not included in the change kind of project management practices on daily basis, at least it is a good way of building up change networks, for example, or then networking directly with the leaders, managers, team leaders, who are then the persons that truly need to be the ones telling the background and the need for the change for them, their own people and the team. Because then the managers most close to the people are then the persons that are the first line of needing to answer all the questions and and who need to also take all the complaints and the feedback for themselves, and then take it forward. But yes, it is very important to participate every level of people within an organization. So even though there would be like a project management office for the change management, if it's not the change management team that can really ensure the success of the change as a whole.
Yeah, and especially in DevOps, I would say that kind of all things, culture included, it's not something that can be kind of outsourced to one team, but having a strong culture coach or DevOps coach is a huge factor when having these successful transitions, because especially DevOps, it's so wide umbrella of things, and you need to constantly focus and decide on so many things. So it's a huge benefit to have somebody that kind of, the role is to think about the culture and remind the people constantly that what the culture means in this context and why should you care about the culture.
Yeah, and supporting everyone is really important. So yeah, to look at the stakeholder groups and all the levels of the organizations that need to be included, and then figuring out the ways of how to support all these different stakeholders or levels of organization in a way that best then supports their own work on daily basis.
Yeah. The next question is maybe a bit more DevOpsy question. So basically, the question goes that are unit tests and sanity tests done during the process of automation tests? So answering to that question, I would say that you should automate everything. I mean, that's one of the cultural mantra of DevOps, that automate everything that you can. So basically, you should automate all levels of testing. And also, as a nuance, I would say that when you are using automation, that's always also software. So you should also test your test automation. So basically, test your testing. So definitely, all kind of testing should be always done with automation as far as possible. And the next one is again more to Taru, I guess. Do you spread goodness by sharing your cultural strengths outside the company?
A philosophical question. I think very good question. I think you can approach the question as you like. I think always it is always a good approach to spread the goodness, and even if it's culture or it's the daily practices that you talk about in order to spread the good ways of working and the best practices, it's always useful, and I think it always works for the best benefit of everyone. Not only the company itself, but also maybe the clients, also the cooperating companies, but also when you do share good practices and good feelings outside for the outside parties, it also kind of supports and strengthens the practices inside, because then everyone has the feeling that these are so good things that it is very nice to talk about them aloud for others as well, and you can be open about how things are worked within your company. And I think this best supports also the individual experiences, and thereby then builds up the good practices and goodness inside the company as well. How do you see it? Would you think the same?
Yeah, I was starting to think that, and I see that us as a company, as a Gopher, I see that we have many different kinds of forums where we actually show that how we are working and show that how we are doing things, and that I see that is our way of kind of showing our culture outside. But I got more interested about the question that it says now that do you, but I was starting to think that should you spread? I mean, what should I answer to that? And then I was starting to think that I cannot come up any good ideas. Why shouldn't I spread the cultural things outside the company? I mean, that's not any kind of market advantage or anything to hold the culture in yourself. I mean, it's just beneficial to everybody to kind of show everybody that how can things work well and what is the meaning of culture, and that enables everybody to do their best. So definitely everybody should. Also.
Yeah, and I think that might be one indicator also in the following up sense that that if the people or the persons are eager and want to spread the goodness of the company outside, then I think it's a good indicator that they are in the culture and they want to then kind of pronounce that this is what they are and this is what they work for, and want to get someone else and other persons to follow the same. And maybe if any sharing is not done, maybe that's an indicator of somehow having it wrong, because maybe then things are so that I don't want to tell about them aloud. I don't want anyone to follow us, and I don't want to state that I'm working for this, but something else.
Yeah, so actually it's a worrying signal about the culture if you are not talking about that outside your company.
It might be, of course, you cannot, maybe not in every case, but it might be, yes.
Yeah. Next question was that do you use special tools to measure how people are talking about culture, negatively or positively? That was a question for my reply on that how would I measure that? But that I guess that was just part that I said that it's extremely hard to measure. and from,
it might be, but of course this is kind of a good example of measuring and following up the experiences and the feelings. And for that, for example, GEA has the Selkeä Insight measurement tool that is particularly designed for this purpose, and it has all the research work backing up the way it has been designed, and for what meaning, and how then it kind of collects the feelings up together, and how can you use them in order to align your activities forward. So of course there is automated solutions for this kind of purposes as well already at place.
Yeah, and my way of normally measuring that is maybe not that scientific. That comes from the lean, about these principles of this Gemba bubble. So basically, when you are among the people, you kind of hear how people are talking and how people are feeling. But I don't know how to put that on the numbers and kind of monitor that. But you can quite fastly see that what is the kind of normal idea about the company when people are talking together. So.
Yes, you can. But then again, when you have like 12,000 people in a company, then it's difficult to hear everyone's thoughts without having a proper tool for it. But there are really solutions available for this purpose.
Yeah, that's good to know. Last question that we have on the list is that do we have any specific examples of spreading the goodness outside?
Examples. Well, I would suggest that everyone gets active with, for example, using LinkedIn. And how do people share things over there? Because I think that's something that is used very much to share thoughts and feelings from the working life and the experiences from your daily working. And of course you can there also you can see that it might not always be the good things. Of course you can always kind of, it's the easiest way to share the positive things and all the good things that you can really embrace. But then again, people are really open sometimes also to raise the problems and the challenges and the learning experiences that might be also painful. And I think that's one way of seeing how the goodness is spread aloud. And I don't think that the goodness is always only the positive things, but it can be also to share openly the mistakes or something that has not gone right. And while you share it, it mostly in most cases it works as a reflection for the situation or the case, and by reflection you turn it as a learning experience. And I think this learning experience then is goodness also.
Yeah, and I think that these huge American companies are much better of this kind of sharing. I mean, there are lots of things where they have been kind of forming some kind of teams to participate some events, or they have been doing some charity, or they actually have been writing books about how they treat their personnel or that kind of things. But yeah, don't know any specific examples, but rather than those.
Yeah.
But
and also the actions of marketing are spreading out the goodness. And I think that marketing as its best, it's not only to kind of push your services for new possible clients, but it is used in a way to openly tell what we do, what we are best at, how can you benefit from our services and our products, and get the feeling that what kind of clients we would like to have. And then as its best, the right kind of persons or other companies start to following your marketing, and thereby can be possible candidates for clients as well. And I think marketing is a very good way of expressing the goodness and spreading it aloud.
yeah, exactly. I guess that those were the questions that we had this time. I thank you for the questions, and once again, thank you for all the listeners, and thank you, Taru, for being on the webinar. And yeah, thanks.
Thank you very much. And if you have anything, do please contact later on directly.
Definitely. Yeah. So bye-bye.
Thank you. Have a nice day.